Go.
Good afternoon, cohort 22, tape 2, but this is still our last day of the last semester and the last presentation you'll ever have to hear from me or anyone in my group. Speaking of my group, it's Charlene, Mark, Elvis, and David. My name is David Hill, and this is our final exam for Dr. Wheeler. Some background on the case study, which was the Southwest Airlines crisis on do they lay off people as they become more productive as an organization. The new CEO back in the early 2000s, James Parker, averted firing many of the employees in their customer service organization right after the 9/11 crisis because they had a company culture of teamwork and trust. Was one of the reasons why they were able to weather that storm and that downturn. However, 2 years later, so more like 2004, the company was going through another crisis due to the online ticketing that had become so successful, was reducing the need for customer service agents to take reservations by phone. Because of that success, they had to do something because they were carrying extra costs they didn't need. They needed to go from 9 call centers down to 3. So the decision at hand for Mr. Parker was mandatory layoffs for the employees in those customer service organizations to immediately save costs, or how could he, along with his leadership team and organization, provide creative cost-cutting alternatives to save the culture. And so I'll now turn it over to Mark.
So in answering those questions, we've looked at several decision models that we've talked about throughout the semester. Starting with rational decision making, we have the normative decision making, or how people should choose. Mr. Parker probably didn't necessarily fall in that category, nor in the descriptive of how people do choose, but more in the naturalistic category of where it's situation driven. There was no playbook for what happened right after 9/11. There was no playbook for online coming up so great and not needing all those customer service folks. So he really this is kind of a sweet spot for him in terms of the decision-making models. We also looked at the lens model, anchoring and adjusting, and I'll talk a little bit more about that because I think that's where we really felt that the Southwest landed in terms of models, and then heuristic model. And I'll leave, no one's here. So we thought that the model that was best fit this case was the anchoring and adjusting. So anchoring on that past being the cutting edge customer service that they provided, that they anchored themselves to that, and they had such a great ability to work with their employees, and there was a lot of employee satisfaction, not just customer satisfaction, but a bond of trust between the employees and leadership. And then from there they adjusted into the future to take them into greater places that I think David mentioned earlier. So one more slide. So other leadership concepts that we studied throughout the semester: thinking first, seeing first, doing first. Thinking first has a lot to do with rationalizing, looking at what's happened in the past and rationalize, well, should we do that in the future? Seeing first has a lot to do with insight, not just what you see, but what you think, intuitive sort of decision making. And then finally, doing first, or basically experimentation. We also looked at when to trust your gut. We talked about utilizing emotion, but with balance. There's always a balance, and Mr. Parker definitely had balance to his emotions. Searching for patterns within the patterns, and great leaders are looking and seeing patterns that most people can't see because they've taken in more data points than anybody else. Always trust but verify when you make that decision. So trust your gut that you made a good decision, but go back and make sure you didn't miss something. Decision-making frameworks, we talked about a simple, complicated, complex, and chaotic frameworks. And then finally, thinking backward and forward, where thinking backward is more intuitive, there's suggestive, requires a lot of judgment. Thinking forward has to do with assembling and weighing variables and then making predictions. And from there, I'll turn it over to Elvis.